best friend, Bob Vokey. I feel like I can say that, don't you?
I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
I've known you for like 5 minutes, Bob. That's weird that you'd agree to that. But anyway, talking about your new SM9 wedges.
My best yet.
Your best yet? Okay, well that's good. I'm glad you're improving. So before we hit a couple of these shots too and talk about all the cool stuff you're doing, how often do you think the average player should get fit for wedges?
The average player, first off, you'd be surprised. We did a survey, being fit. There's only about 17% of the golfing public have been fit for wedges.
It's absurd, isn't it?
That is absurd.
It is crazy. Yeah,
because, hey, the most important shot, maybe I'm a little prejudiced, but is inside 60% of your score.
You're definitely biased, but I agree. This is important.
Think about it, you know? Think about it, where your score shot.
Yeah, so not enough people get fit, but what do you think?
Unbelievable.
How often should someone get fit?
Everybody should be fit when they're going to turn around and a new set of wedges, first and foremost. Yeah. When you get a new set of wedges, I definitely need to be fit.
Now how about the average guy? How often should they do that?
Every time. Every time he's going to get fit.
Okay.
Yes. I honestly believe it.
So you think every year, every couple years?
And you know what happens to your swing? I would say 2 to 3 years is a good average.
Yeah.
Or whenever time you change your equipment.
Right, that makes a ton of sense. I usually tell people you might get like 300 good consistent strikes out of these, and then at that point in time your grooves start to get very inconsistent.
You know what I like? The average 75 to 100 rounds of golf.
Okay.
From the average golfer, and that's it considering you got sand shots he's going to hit, practicing and all things like that. And what's going to happen? He's going to lose that little bit of that spin.
Yeah, sure.
The shot that you used to hit from say 50, 60 yards, maybe 7, 8 feet, all of a sudden rolls out a bit. After 75 rounds, all of a sudden it's rolling out 10 to 15, 20. And what happens is it's such a gradual, and the average player doesn't realize it.
Yeah, you don't even notice that you're losing 1,000 RPMs of spin every dozen rounds.
And it's so important. You're going to make a heck of a lot more putts the closer you hit the ball to the hole.
Yeah, that's good. And then
that's so important.
Also long or like full wedges. That's not where you should get fit for wedges. We'll talk about that in a second. But then when your grooves start to wear down, those 90 or 100-yard shots that you're pretty accustomed to start going.
The ball high,
higher, farther,
spin,
maybe,
and short. It could be short. If you hit a flyer, it's going to go longer. Especially if it's a first cut, you're going to hit.
So every time you get a new set, and then every time you're just interested in getting new wedges, you need to gap yourself appropriately.
It's so very important. Okay. You know, and you know what? And it's not every wedge in the set. I'm not trying to sell. Go and get 4 Titleist wedges every time.
I appreciate that.
It's usually one wedge in your particular set. It's your go-to wedge.
Yeah.
Whether it be your sand wedge or your lob wedge.
Okay, that's a good take.
That's the one that you ought to definitely first take that. Either go through TrackMan, Flight Scope, or just hit some shots.
So I've got a 58-08 with your M grind. I'm just going to hit one of these. This is pretty typical for the shot I would hit. We picked the hardest shot at Goat Hill, so let's see what I can do on this one. Got to carry it 2 more feet, and that's by the hole. 2 more feet,
it would have been a great shot.
But this is the wedge I would most commonly hit around the greens. Should I be fitting myself based on this, or should I start at the pitching wedge and gap myself appropriately from there?
You know, for the type of shot that you want to hit, you're going to start at your pitching wedge. I like to start at a 9-iron.
Okay.
To my pitch, and then all of a sudden I like 4 to 6 degrees between wedges, and that equates to 10 to 15 yards.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, when you get past that, I see people that turn around and have like a 22, 30-yard gap, and they say, oh, I can cover that gap. You can cover that gap. So a lot of times what I'll do a little exercise. I'll put a wedge over there. I'll march off 22 yards, 23 yards.
Just give a little test.
And I'll say, take a look at that, take a look at that. Now you can hit this shot in the center. And the guy, oh, I didn't know that.
You're an evil man for convincing them that they can't do that. You just crushed hopes and dreams there.
That's exactly it.
But yeah, Bob's bringing up the perfect point. 4 to 6 degrees in between your wedges gives you the appropriate gapping between those two. Because I see the same thing. Amateurs come in, they've got a pitching wedge and then like a 56 degree.
There you go.
They might have 160 yards in between those clubs. Okay, so the wedge shaft itself.
But I've always, that wedge shaft I've had for probably 26 years in there now. It's a Subflex S.
Sure.
It's a very, very good shaft. Comes a lot of tests. I could turn around and you're going to hit a stock wedge that you're going to get. You can pick up. You can use that shaft out of a pro shop. It's a great shaft. It'll be very good. It'll give you the proper elevation for all the types of shots that you want to hit.
Yeah.
Next, it'll stay with you on the occasion that you want to hit a full shot.
So you feel like pretty much everybody can fit into this? I don't know if it's an
It is pretty
S200
good,
or whatever
but
it is.
I won't say everybody. Everybody makes a very good wedge shaft.
Sure.
I'll go, True Temper makes a great wedge shaft, which of course we're using right now, but they also sell it to other people. And what I like to do, KBS makes a great wedge shaft. Nippon makes a great wedge shaft. I think it's very important, maybe all the way through with your iron, right through your pitch and your approach wedge, stay with the same shaft.
Yeah,
But when you get to your sand wedge and your lob wedge, there so much feel is involved.
Sure.
You know, the closer you get to the green, the more versatile that shot making becomes. Feel gives you, next thing you know, you're going to get confidence. So you've hit a lot of different shots. So there's nothing wrong with changing your sand wedge and your lob wedge to a little different shaft.
Sure.
Although this wedge shaft that you have right now is a very, very good shaft.
Yeah, so the little softer shaft,
little softer
bends a
shaft.
little more, doesn't have quite as harsh of a sound that way.
You know, like I've had a lot of players, you know, they go X1s all the way through irons.
Those are hard.
Put a sand wedge and lob wedge in there.
Yeah.
You know, many years ago, I give you a quick little Tiger story.
Yeah, I'm sure no one would want to hear a Tiger story.
When Tiger was on our staff, great guy. We did a lot of work together. I asked him, I said, you know, you ever think about softening up your sand wedge and lob wedge? Maybe go try an S4 in it.
Right.
He said, what'll it do? I told him to give you elevation, touchy-feelies that you want to hit, great bunker club. So I put him in just about 2 weeks before he went to Pebble Beach in 2000. And I didn't see him. I never forget. I was walking at St. Andrews at 2000, walking up 18, and on a Tuesday, practice round, he's tees off on 1. It's parallel. He's walking by, and I said, hey, T, how'd those shafts work out? He just turned around, hey, Voke, you saw what you did at Pebble, didn't you? That's all he said.
Enough
And
said.
we all know what he did.
Enough said.
And that's just a pretty example. Like JT, same, Justin Thomas, you know, I told him Tiger story, same sort of thing, and he softened them up. Jordan, he had 6.5s, sand and lob, 6.0s.
Yeah.
Just a little softer shaft. Because you're not going to stand on it. How often do you stand on it?
Rarely. I mean,
Rarely
that's where
did you stand on it, and Tiger told me he lost maybe 1 yard, maybe 2 yards occasionally when he stood on it. But how often, he said, do I stand on it as versus the ability of other shots that I gain greenside?
Exactly. That's what I think tour players, S400s is typically the most common shaft around that one.
It is a good one.
Okay, so how about the gap between, I get this question a lot. That one's
Go.
probably pretty good. I can make that one. Yeah, you like that? I'm sure they missed that one, but of course, that's how it goes. At what point should you go from the like your club's setup of gap wedge, so 4-iron through gap wedge, or should you start to pick up the more appropriate gap wedge that you might make?
That is a good question. When I grew up a couple of years ago, we played pitching.
At least 2 or 3
Pitching
maybe.
wedges were in that 50, 51 degree range.
Sure.
And they did not belong in a set. You had to buy that particular pitching wedge set, because what happened, pitching wedge, they did different shots. You had shots from the first cut, you had bump and runs, you could even use it in the bunker. You could flake the ball a little bit different.
Right.
And those are different things that it could do. But what happened is, sets come, they start bending them stronger. All of a sudden they become 10 irons. All of a sudden they become 11 irons. To me, the pitching wedge that came with sets, it wasn't it was just a 10 iron. It was just an extension, you know, of the iron set. So what I did, and I talked about it many years ago, talking to many players, I designed it with the loft of a pitching wedge, but it was designed with the creativity of a scoring wedge in mind, to hit all the different shots that I know that I grew up with old classic pitching wedges.
That's good. That's good.
And it's been proven, like a good little stat, 67% of the players on tour who use our wedges, and are using
Your scoring wedge?
as versus a set pitching wedge.
And I'm surprised the number isn't higher than that.
Yeah, it's
understand
running
what you
right
mean.
there. But by now, that was a survey taken a couple of years ago. It's probably a little higher than that.
Well, you've got a lot of stats. I know you've been around for a couple of years doing this, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, I got the M grind. That's what I mentioned earlier. This is pretty typical, I would think, for what everyone could play, but maybe even players who like to open the face a little bit more.
No doubt about it, because it's got, you see it's got the heel and toe, toe removed.
I see the relief right
basically,
here.
Which, you know, heel and toe removed. Heel and toe removed. And this comes from working many years ago when I got that. I got from different players that I work with. Remember Lanny Watkins, I took the toe off a little bit for him, and the trailing edge for Seve and Lee in the back, and that's where the M grind came about.
So that's like Seve and Lee, that was so that they could open the face more and lower the leading edge.
What it does, you know, you take a wider sole. If you rotate it open, you're rotating on the trailing edge, and as a result, the leading edge pops up. So what here, you can see the leading edge. You can rotate it, and it moves the contact point closer to the center, and it rotates.
Right.
And as a result, the leading edge is not coming up. It gives you more versatility.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point about what you're really doing, though, and I haven't really explained this in a video before or not, but what you're doing by cutting out that relief there is changing the height of the leading edge.
No
that's
doubt
almost
about
the
it.
most important part.
That's what we're trying to do the whole time.
Yeah, so more bounce is just leaving the leading edge higher,
that's it.
which for a lot of bad players, that's good. Because now they've got some room to hit behind the ball. But if you're super skilled and you want to hit some high shots, keeping that leading edge lower is useful.
So important.
But you can't screw that one up.
No, exactly.
Don't screw that up. What do you got in your hand? Should I hit that instead?
Believe it or not, it's just, I call it, this particular one, this is the D grind.
D?
I call it, it's almost like the son of the M. It's same design as the M, except it has a little bit more bounce.
All right.
For the occasion that you may want to use it in the bunker, soft sand, soft turf, rough. It's a great versatile golf club. And again, when you lay it open a little bit, it has more bounce, but it doesn't come up as much as it normally would if it was a full sole.
Yeah, that's good. And we were talking about this before, but I think most amateurs should play with 12 degrees of bounce or more on their wedges once you get above the gap wedge.
Take your sand wedge. I like, on my rule of thumb, I tell you, probably I'll preach this till I go up the big bunker in the sky. It's higher bounce sand wedge, lower bounce lob wedge. I think it's a good combination, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a lower bounce sand wedge. Sometimes, because we have great higher bounce sand wedge. If a player has a particular, call it a weakness, it's not where they're skilled. They may like what I call our K grind or our higher bounce D grind. It's a very good bunker club, so you can use both.
Okay.
It's very possible.
I think all these look nice, and you know, I didn't cover yet, but I mean, what's different about the 9 than say what you did to the 7 and the 8?
Very good. It's good. You know, I get asked all the time, Voke. I get players bugging me. They say, "Oh, okay, you could have done that in the 8. You could have done it in the 7."
What took you so long?
Exactly.
Why didn't you do that
all
sooner?
the time.
I'm going to ask you the same thing.
Come on, Voke. Players I've known. I said, no. I said, what happens is, it takes a long time to get the feedback.
Yeah.
One thing we cannot replicate the feel on the backside Sunday afternoon when something happens to a tour player.
That's a tough iteration to make without some input.
That is tough to make. So where does it come about? We're getting it now, all good so far, from the players playing the tour. We released them in January. It's going to take probably 3 months before we can say, what we got is pretty doggone good, or we want to maybe change a little something. I always tell all the guys, you know, my team, great team, and I always tell them, little things we hear, we can chase it a wee bit, let's try to improve upon it, but let's not mess up what we already have.
Don't need to reinvent the wheel. You've got a pretty good wedge after.
That's it. So we keep tweaking it all the time, and it's incremental changes.
Yeah.
You know, what we've done on these, it's really good, but again, progressive center of gravity.
Okay.
What happens sometimes, you have the center of gravity, you know, what happens if we kept moving it up, we make it a little thicker on the top line. What happens as a result is it goes up, it also goes back, and sometimes it changes the dynamic loft in certain shots. So we change that. We change that by, as you noticed in the 58 through 62, the hosels are a little bit longer.
Okay.
As a result, what that does, it moves the weight out a little bit in front of the hosel, and as a result, we move it up without it going back. So it's very neat to do. I mean, I could like to explain it, but I don't explain.
No, that's exactly what people who watch this want to know.
It's a very
Yeah. Well, let me try.
Great change.
You judge me on this one.
Okay.
So you've added some weight. This will be hard to see from that camera, but you've got high toe. You added some metal.
The top line?
Yeah.
You can see it right here.
You added some metal up here. So that could move the CG towards the toe and definitely is going to move it back because it's farther from the leading edge. But then just made the hosel a little bit longer to accommodate for the toe.
Through each loft. It changes.
Okay. How much are you moving? How much longer did you make the hosel? Doesn't look like much, but
not a heck of a lot. You can turn around and take a look at the M and the D.
Kind of hold those up. They'll get a good look at that one. Yeah, it's just a little bit.
A little bit. You can see it.
Quarter of an inch, maybe.
Yeah,
is that fair?
Quarter inch plus. Okay. It'll vary on lofts.
Hand me that 54 back. I'm going to try to hit this one a little bit. Well, now I got to hit it a little shorter. So now I might have to bounce it over those sprinkler heads.
Show me what you got.
Okay. Carried it too far, and it's on the back edge. I'll two-putt that one, though.
But you know you're putting.
Yep, I hit behind that one, which the bounce is then helping me skip that club into the ball without losing ball.
You can still open it up a little bit more than you need.
I feel like I could open this
one
up
to open up a little bit more, that
64 degrees, and it'd be just fine.
That is like cheating.
Yeah. So I hit that one much higher.
There's the shot.
That was about right. Just pushed it a little bit too much. I'm going to make that one, though. I'm just going to hit flop shots with this 54-12 D.
Sandwich. Remember I told you, use your sandwich. You can hit all those shots with a sandwich. You're trying that with a lobber. There's your sandwich.
So this is the downhill,
lay it up,
hard breaking green away from me shot. I just hit a 54-12 really high.
The key, like what I always try to do, is like try to get the right tools in your toolbox.
Yeah, I like it.
And that's the key.
Tell me, like, if you're trying to fit yourself for wedges, where do you see most people go wrong? You grab something off the rack or impulse buy.
You know what they do? I call it the average weekend golf. They look in the bucket. You have a bucket of wedges like that, and what do? What do they gravitate towards? That's cool.
That's cool?
That's
so don't buy it because it's cool? Alrighty, I disagree with you, Bob, but keep going.
You know, like, it looks good.
It looks good, right? That's why you buy clubs.
The biggest mistake, I call it, a bad fit can hurt you more than a good fit can help you.
That's fair.
It's so important. When a guy grabs, I take it out, next thing you know, he goes out, he hits some shot, and he's, oh, that's a bad wedge. To me, my whole mantra is, the low-hanging fruit in the player's bag is a sand wedge.
That's so good. So I try to say something similar with just fitting clubs in general.
Yeah.
You're never going to find this perfect utopia of a club fitting. That should never be what it's about. No. You want to make sure that you've got a really good fit and that you have some clubs that'll last for a while, but stop looking for this perfect club. There's only one out there in the world that you're going to find. Is that fair with wedges too?
This is why I keep going. But what happens and what we've tried, I call it shot versatility.
Right.
So very important. The 3 keys of wedge making: shot versatility. Call it having the right combination of all the clubs that you want, the right kind of spin, the right distance and trajectory control.
Yeah.
So very important. And you have those, and then of course the spin factor.
Yeah.
And we've worked hard on those 3 areas to improve upon each one, and we have done that. You know, it's just so very important. I mean, this is the first scoreline change we've had since SM6.
I didn't know that was different. Tell me about that.
We've changed it. If you can look at the score lines, we've worked on our vendor to refine the actual process. So we take it closer to the edge. They're all conforming.
Yep.
Because we test. We check them over our vendor, and we also check them in-house to make sure it goes out. So everything is conforming, and you'll see the score line. And you'll see within them, you can see a raised area. There's about 5 little parallel raised areas, and they're all conforming. And of course, what that does, that's great on the little touchy-feely partial shots, where you're not generating a club head speed. Get you good, you'll see a little touch and feely shots.
So you're trying to do just a different kind of a V groove?
Yeah,
is that what you're explaining?
It's the same kind of groove that we've always got.
Yeah.
And you could look at hold it up and.
But now you just have the steps that go down into
they're just in parallel between the score lines.
Okay.
There's a raised area. There's 5 parallel raised areas.
Okay, now I understand
it's
what you mean.
It's right in between the score lines.
So the grooves are the same. It's the area that's just in between there is raised up a little bit. Okay.
Closer.
Interesting.
We talk to our cutters. We've had average, a lot of grooves that were checked.
I'm sure. There's a lot just on this.
Each one of those are checked. We got 17 average, 16, 17 million wedges. That's a lot of score lines.
All right. I'm gonna hit another one of these. I'm gonna try to hit this one by the hole. You got a favorite tour story or something that people haven't heard you talk about, or?
I got so many you cannot believe.
I'm sure.
I got so many, but you mentioned about.
Did you see that, Bob? Hang on, we gotta stop talking for a second.
See what I'm saying?
Look at that. Hey, so you do a good
when
job.
You got
what can
game,
I say?
You can do it. I hate to say it, it's a wedge.
It's a wedge,
no, it's a
I
guy
know,
holding the
but
handle.
you still have to know how to
The
hit these
guy
shots.
holding the handle.
Right, right.
I'm liking the action.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite tour story? Sorry, I interrupted you.
Favorite? Well, I got so many, but I got so many. You'd have to want individual. I got a lot of Seve stories, but I'll tell you what Seve always told me, and I use it when I fit all the time. He'd say, Vokey, short shot, short club. And as you go short club, what happens to the toe? The toe comes up.
Yeah.
This is where I believe some of the best wedge players that I've ever worked with, particularly in your lob wedge, they like them a little flatter.
Yeah, right.
A little on the flat side, because the low swing path, work underneath the ball.
And if nothing else, you're just going to hit it higher and to the right by having a misfit lie angle.
That's so very, very important. You know, it's so, and I think a lot of people don't understand lie. Lie just think, oh, we just anything. Lie is so very important.
Sure.
You know, it detects how you're going to hit certain shots. Look at the ball, you're saying, okay, well, that's sitting up nice now. I can probably use my sand wedge, or I can use my lob wedge, or I can, use anything, you know, from that type of lie. But a lot of times you're not going to be sitting like that. You'd be downhill, side hill, what you're hitting to. That's so important to help you decide, do I use my sand wedge? Do I use my lob wedge? Or maybe I use my approach wedge, just a little bump and run.
All right, so you get to the question I wanted to ask. Are you an advocate of using your whole bag around this club, or just one?
So very important. Use your whole bag. That's what they're there for. You got 3, maybe 4 wedges.
Okay.
You know, I'm always favor the south end of the set, which is wedges.
Yeah, of course you are.
As versus
I'm
the
not
north
asking
end,
you about hybrids, Bob. You want to talk about hybrids?
No, I got a couple of those.
Hey, what do you think about the new trend on wedges that not only are they more high CG, which makes sense for a wedge, especially a full one, but also putting grooves all the way out on the toe? I know you haven't done that yet.
I never was an advocate of that.
Yeah.
I never was an advocate of that because I basically said many, many times, you never hit it out there.
That's not really where the clubs are struck.
You don't hit them, although there is some players. Want another tour story?
Yes, yes.
I'm at a river about 3 years ago, Riviera. Freddie Couples calls me. I heard this, Voke, I haven't talked to you in 22 years. I haven't asked you for anything. He said, I got this wedge here. He shows me a wedge, and it says it was an old SM6, and it had BH on it, which Bill Haas. And you got that from Bill Haas, and he says, yeah, we played a tournament back. And he had, I wished I had a picture of it, right out here.
Yeah.
It was half out on the toe, half there, on his lobber. It was a 60 degree S.
Our mutual friend, Brad Faxon, whenever he's hitting little wedge shots, they're low and on the toe, but he never leaves the grooves.
No,
so
he's still on the grooves.
Yeah,
he's still, but tell you.
It's a way to hit a shot,
So
because you can lower the ball speed.
I'm going to say, Freddie, Aaron, come over and see this. I said, Freddie, maybe you leave him a little right? He said, no, I hit it purposely out there. He said, mine's already upright, 65.5 anyway. So we make him a new wedge. He starts hitting shots, and I'm telling you could have put a blanket out there at about a 70-yard shot, and he hits them right out there.
Yeah.
On purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's an example.
You can swing faster, have a get a ball speed, still get a ton of friction.
You get that
That's a good place to hit
feel.
It. It's just hard to do.
Feel.
Yeah.
And talent too.
Yeah, I get it. So you got the M, you showed me the D. What about some of your other grinds? Is there one that you would recommend for the average player, maybe to start with?
Average player is a good one. I always care is the F grind.
Okay.
It's full sole.
Yes.
It's a classic sand wedge.
Exactly.
It's probably one of the most used sand wedges on tour.
Wider, full sole, plenty
classic,
of bounce.
14 degrees of bounce.
Yeah.
That's a good one. It's a good go-to wedge.
And honestly, the first club I grab out of your bag is that wedge.
Yeah.
That's still the one I would probably play
and
the most.
And another little story, I remember when the grinds come out, if Brad Faxon come up to me, and Fad's a great friend of mine, and he says, Voke, what's the F stand for? I said, I should have called it Fax. I just full soul, but I should have called it Fax, because Fax always played a 456-14 and a 256-14. He always played the most bounce sand wedge.
Those high wedges.
He did. So it's an example. That's basically what the F is right there.
And are most of your grinds? I know some of them are named after tour players. Are they all named after tour players?
No.
Or
K grind was named after Tom Kite.
Okay.
TK.
Spent a little time with him. I know he loves your wedges. He's still playing them today.
Yeah, he is. And what else we got? The L grind is after lefty.
Okay. Lefty.
Lefty.
All right.
That's exactly what it came very similar to what lefty. And what he did, though, and I always tell the club people, say, Voke, can tour players that you have, are they just strictly made for tour players, or are they made for the average avid golfer. I said, no, they're made for the average avid golfer. Because what I've always done, when I took a tour player's wedge, he wants the bottom replicated because he's played with this certain wedge for years and years, maybe since high school, and he's played with it forever. So I'll turn around and replicate that, and I'll always ask them, what do you like and don't like about that wedge? And I'll improve upon it. And usually it's by adding a little bit more, I call it maybe a little bit more bounce or a little bit of sole width, which makes it more forgiving for the avid golfer. So as a result, I build that into that particular club. And if a player, I can always take a little bit off for that particular player.
I think, you know, when you had to make clubs in the 90s or 2000s, they might have been very custom for the player, and you couldn't get those grinds. But now
you
today,
couldn't get them. But you know what happens? I don't want to use the players, or maybe I've spoiled them over the years and opened a can of worms.
I'm sure you have.
And 23 SKUs later, plus we have on WedgeWorks a lot of product that you don't see. That the tour player has, we have it on WedgeWorks.
Okay. At what yardage do you think bounce really just doesn't matter anymore? Because
I think it matters all the time.
All the time?
All the time.
So even on the shots where you're...
use the bottom.
Right, sorry. So at what distance does it matter? Like a 100-yard shot, I'm hitting the ball first, and I'm hitting the ground afterwards?
What happens if you don't have a bounce and got a little narrow sole? The leading edge is going down, and it goes further on down as ball. You're going to hit the ball a little higher in the face, and it's going to roll up.
Okay.
My optimum, which I've always tried to design wedges with the different bounce angles, and that's why it's important to be fit. So you can hit the ball in the 2 to 5th groove. I like it low. That gives you your optimum feel, optimum trajectory, and of course distance and spin control.
For those full swing shots, you get a little bit of gear effect in there.
Green side, like here, you're going to hit a little different the shot you're hitting now.
I'm going to do
a little different.
Little high toe on that one. That one's got some spin.
Especially when you hit it when you bump it. But you know what? That was bounce. You're still putting.
That's why I want the bounce.
You're still putting.
I'll make that 10-footer.
If you didn't have bounce, and you hit that same swing, your technique.
Exactly.
You would have fatted it. Next thing you know, you're halfway to the pin.
So you're a big fan of bounce too. I appreciate that for you.
The right amount of bounce.
The right amount,
People always say, Volk loves bounce. Yeah, not high bounce. Not the right amount of bounce for you, which in the right grind, loft, and bounce combination for your particular swing technique and the type of shots that you're trying to hit.
So is 57 degrees of bounce too much? Is that what you're saying?
No, I would say probably 17 degrees.
17 might be pushing it too.
Ironically, I make Lee Trevino a 16-degree bounce.
I'm not surprised.
56 bent to 57.
Yeah.
And that's what he loves bounce. He always said, Volk, you watch him, and I offset. He likes to drive it in low and trap it.
Yeah.
And a lot of time you'll see players use shots like I'm going to say, like you right now when you line up. A lot of players will turn around, and the next thing you know, they start fatting it. As a result, what they're doing, they start moving back.
Oh, that's the worst thing you can do. Right.
What's that's doing? Taking bounce off as they do that.
Just exposing the leading edge.
I say, guys, hit the ball with the trailing edge. Volk, what does that mean? Hit the ball with the trailing edge.
Well, here, let's give everybody a lesson then.
Think that.
This is the area of the club.
That's the trailing edge. That's the bounce.
You want to hit.
Use it. Use it. It's your friend. I guarantee you. Use it. Show me. Hit the bounce.
You're so wise. That's what I'm doing on all of these. None of them are ever hitting the leading edge.
Show me a Seve. Show me a Seve.
That one's got a ton of
want you
spin
to bring
on
the
it.
bounce up a little bit. How do you bring the bounce up a little bit?
Soap in the face more.
Grip down.
Grip down?
Don't use the C word in golf. Just grip down. There you go.
Down lower.
Don't bend lower. Don't bend lower.
That makes Seve happy.
Yes.
So you're effectively just making the club a little flatter.
Yeah.
I like your style. It's a hard shot. Next time, let's pick an easier one.
Yeah, I don't play golf. Get the idea how clean you hit it?
Yeah.
That's all it does. You just sit back down, as you break down. What are you doing? You're bringing a.
I was just attributing that to your wedge design, not the way I'm hitting it.
It's talent.
Yeah, I do this okay usually.
But you got to have the right tools to get the most out of your particular technique.
Yeah. You mentioned Tom Kite. Have you got a good story about him at all? Should we talk
I've
about
got so
him
many.
here? He might watch this.
Yeah. TK gave me a couple of hints a long time ago. A couple of swing tips too. When I first worked with him on that particular sole he had this sole, and I put it on a 456. He had a sole of he was a Hogan staff. He had a sole of a old Hogan wedge. It was a short out. I don't want to need the word name. He had that sole. So what do you like about it? I modified it a little bit, may change the bounce a little bit, narrowed it in a little bit, and that's ended up becoming the K grind. And I know Jason Duffner calls me 2 weeks later at TPC Volk. I'm just hitting shots here with TK. He's got this wedge you made him. on the 400 series, but it has a sole. I said, okay, I'll send you a couple. So I sent him a couple different bounces, and that's how we arrived at the K with the bounce that we did have. You know, and Story, what he always told me, and I was telling him, I was struggling my game. And I said, well, it's only, he said, what's happening, Vok? You get into the ball, all of a sudden, your shoulder's stopping and your hands are cupping. Instead of keep moving.
Keeping that moving?
Keep it moving. And I was telling him I got that from Mac O'Grady. I played with Mac O'Grady many years ago. And Mac told me I was doing that. And TK says,
I'd listen to him.
That's a good TK, you know. I said,
yeah, Mac's a huge influence over how I teach golf too, so I can imagine what he was describing that
He's describing moving the shoulder.
Keep moving it up and turn it.
Torino gave me the story in 10 red days. The other one, shoulder, watch lead.
Yeah, keeps moving the shoulder. That's a good way to actually practice that.
Yeah.
So what other tidbits do you have? Here's what I got out of you for like style of hitting a shot. Open the face, hold it lower like Seve said.
Trailing edge.
Trailing edge is your spot to hit it, and keep your left shoulder moving through the shot, which I agree.
Rotate.
Most people, if they do struggle with the game, it's
rotate.
slowing down the butt of the club too much.
Never let this catch up to this.
Yeah.
You got to keep it moving.
It's good advice, best friend. You're very smart.
Yeah, keep moving up. I'm not a PGA pro. I just listen to the players I work with.
That's right. You've been around so many good ones.
I work with the best in the world. I ask them all. You know, he's a great listener, note taker, and that's how it all came about. I like to say, I'm not an engineer. I'm a golf guy.
Yeah, you're a golf guy who knows how to grind these things down pretty well. And you're a steward of the game. That's pretty cool. Well, it's awesome hanging out with you.
I love it.
Thanks for sharing all the tour player stories, giving us some tips. I might have to get some Titleist wedges next.
What are you playing now? Don't say it.
I won't say it.
Don't say it.
It's fine. Titleist.
And everybody makes a very good product. Every manufacturer, everybody makes a good product.
Everybody's had a lot of practice and experience, and they learned a ton from you.
But we have everybody who stand at Titleist. We love what we do.
Yeah.
We all love what we do, and we try to pass it on. And our mantra is help players play better golf.
That's a good one.
And enjoy the game more. Yeah. That's all.
That's a good one. It's simple, but it is a perfect mission for what you're trying to do.
Play better golf.
That's awesome. So I think the way to send this one off is you got to tell everybody to get fit. So why don't you do that?
I'll tell you. I get asked many times, Vok, what's your most important thing? You'll say, I'll say the most important thing is to go to your local fitter and get fit. And hopefully it's a Titleist fitter, because these fellas are well trained. I had a little to do with it, but Matt did too. Braden, we all did. We all worked together to do the system that we have in place right now. And I feel it's a pretty good one. So go get fit. It's so important.
I think he said it all. Thanks for watching.